There are apocryphal stories circulated to a great degree on the fringes and by those who give credence to conspiracy theories that the Nazis were either constructing their own fleet of UFOs at the end of the war, or were more fantastically, even in contact with a race of perhaps malevolent extraterrestrial entities. There are sketches of supposed Nazi UFOs circulating the internet, crafted with names like the Flugelrad and the Klugelblitz. I cannot vouch for the veracity of any of these claims, but I can relate to you the information I have gleaned from supposed sources who know. Of course, Hitler and the Nazis were often said to have been mad for the occult, borrowing much of their symbology and mystical philosophy from the occult lodges from which their early leadership grew. Hitler in particular has been said to have been obsessed with the spear of Longinus, the spear that pierced the side of Christ at the crucifixion, and is even said to have been a mystical initiate in a secret brotherhood that found its inspiration in the pages of the great saga Parsifal by Wolfram von Eschenbach. Himmler was known to be mad about psychical research and established the SS school at Wewelsburg to train his elite corps in the occult secrets behind National Socialism. These secrets included the performing of rituals, one of which, at least, according to author Dusty Sklar, included human sacrifice. Of course, I have no way of knowing how much of this gothic horror scenario is actually true, but the claims are made, and they are made upon seemingly solid evidence. One of the philosophical underpinnings of Nazi philosophy was the secret doctrine, by medium Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, a massive esoteric tome that postulated that man once lived in a state of perfection, but that intermingling with inferior races, unquote, had caused him to lose his supernatural fellowship and fall into a degraded state. This theme would be carried on by French neo-Nazi Savitri Devi, a Hindu priestess who worshipped Hitler as an incarnation of the god Vishnu. Her book, The Lightning and the Sun, is considered a classic in fascist circles. Whatever the case, it is an unquestionable fact that Nazism has deep roots in esoteric and occult thought. Vallee has suggested in his book Messengers of Deception that contact between man and UFO entities may be part of a long-range plan to promote a sort of neo-fascism enacted by a shadowy or mysterious group to serve its own purposes. Vallee gives his readers the example of American Nazi sympathizer William Dudley Pelley, leader of the Silver Shirts, who was interned during the war on suspicion of being an enemy agent. Pelley later became a trance channel and the founder of Soulcraft Publishing. His understudy in later life was George Hunt Williamson, a spiritualist and early writer on UFOs and esoteric subjects, who was with George Adamski the day he went out to the desert to meet Orthon, a tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Venusian who, according to Adamski, landed in a scout ship with a universal message of peace and brotherly love. Williamson himself channeled a bewildering variety of, quote, space brothers, unquote. So the idea of an interstellar fascist cabal is not that far off, perhaps. Today it is chiefly discussed in the New Age conspiracy theories of author and researcher David Icke, with a few modifications. To return to the topic at hand, Nazi UFOs supposedly did exist. The story about them, at least one story about them, is this. In the early part of the 20th century, a number of German occult societies sprang up, their doctrines a loose mixture of politics, racial science, and mysticism. Their driving aim to establish for the German people a mythological pedigree that connected them to a glorious Viking past. Hitler was probably exposed to the ideas of these societies while living in Vienna through the pages of Ostara, his favorite magazine. At any rate, one of these societies, Thule, had an offshoot called the Vril Society. The Vril group took its inspiration from the pages of a strange science fiction novel by Edward Bulwer Lytton called The Coming Race, the plot of which concerned a subterranean race who had mastered a form of supernatural energy called Vril, with which they could perform miracles. The members of the Vril Society actually believed in this possibility, and so Vril member Dr. W.O. Schumann, in 1920, contacted the renowned medium Maria Ortiz, or Orsic, as her name has also been given, and another medium called simply Sigrun. Ortiz, so the story goes, claimed that she had made contact with otherworldly entities or gods who had given her instructions on how to build an interdimensional flying machine. Unquote. This machine, of course, was disc-shaped and was supposedly actually constructed. These beings were high extraterrestrials from the Aldebaran star system. According to aircraft historian Henry Stevens, this vehicle was at first thought to have been designed by gods, but later members of the Vril group felt they were really in contact with a race of extraterrestrials. Stevens says, the craft basically would work because of the interaction of two spinning, not just alternating, magnetic fields. They believed this interaction would cause not only the craft, but the entire region, to function outside the physical laws that we are bound by. In other words, they felt they could surf on gravity. And indeed, the Vril Society built this machine in the mid-1920s, and it levitated. Dr. Schumann, not content to rest on his laurels, continued working on his Vril-powered electromagnetic anti-gravity device, finally constructing a flying disc called the Vril-1, which was allegedly tested in 1934. A pilot named Wietz was supposedly the man at the helm, but the machine, though it flew, proved to be erratic. It crash-landed and then self-destructed. But the Vril Society, and now the German government, found themselves interested. The story gets even weirder with the addition of a crashed UFO that supposedly went down in the Black Forest. The German government allegedly discovered this wreck, and the technology from back engineering was given to the Vril Society to put with the channeled material they already had. The result? A large flying saucer called the Hanibu-1. This vehicle was purportedly flown for the first time in 1939. There were other scientists, such as Miete, Victor Schauberger, who was apparently working on a design that could be powered on tonal frequencies or cosmic vibrations, and Epps, who were all working on saucer-based designs. Miete, who would go on to build the Avro car, a failed flying saucer hover car tested for the United States government. Meath, who would go on to build the Avro car, a failed flying saucer hover car tested for the United States government, was supposedly successful and bragged to Hitler in a memo that he had tested his device, the V7, in Prague, that it had flown to 24,000 meters and claimed that it could be run on unconventional energy, unquote. Perhaps a reference to the earlier Vril-powered craft of Dr. Schumann. Alas, the end of the war saw the plans and prototypes for these miraculous vehicles destroyed. Usually this was done by their creators, as in the case of Czech scientist named Schriever, who pushed his saucer out into the tarmac near the test area and dynamited it. He had heard the Red Army were in the suburbs of Prague and realized that all was lost. Of course, all was not lost for the Allies, who took home every bit of military intelligence or captured technology they could lay their hands on as they swept through Germany at the end of the war. This alone has led some UFO researchers to speculate that, just perhaps, the flying saucer phenomenon could be accounted for by captured Nazi technology. Whatever the case, the years immediately after the war would see the beginning of an awesome wave.